All right. At the end of 1 Corinthians, Paul gives 4 jabs. That's what I call them. Just 4 jabs. He's wrapping up the book. And he says this to the church at Corinth. The church at Corinth was screwed up. Every time you read a chapter of Corinth, he's correcting them. They had all the gifts, but they were immature. They didn't live in the Bible Belt. They lived in a seacoast city like New Orleans or San Francisco. It was tough sledding. A lot of idolatry, a lot of affluence. Paul says this to them. 4 jabs. This is how I view it. Just boom, 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 boom. Be on the alert. Jab 1. This is 1 Corinthians 13. I don't know if I said that. Be on the alert. Here's number 2. Stand firm in the faith. Number 3. Act like men. Number 4. Be strong. I want to focus on act like men. That's the topic I was given. Lead like men. But we can't ignore the other 3 jabs. He says, be on the alert. Now, you got to cross-reference that with 1 Peter 5. Be on the alert. Why would I be on the alert? The minute you get serious about following Christ, the enemy gets serious about you. What the enemy wants to do is neutralize men from having a spiritual influence in their home. And if you don't have a spiritual influence in your home, you can't have a spiritual influence in the church. But when you get serious about Jesus, following Jesus, you're not perfect. Jesus is perfect. Oh, Steve, I'm always messing up. The things I don't want to do, I do. And I know. I do the same thing. Yeah, that's my problem. Well, that's Romans 7. Get out of Romans 7 and get to Romans 8. There is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. You see? Jesus is perfect. We're screwed up. There used to be a book out years ago. I'm okay, you're okay. I'm okay, you're okay. One day I want to write a book called I'm Screwed Up, You're Screwed Up. But Jesus is great. Jesus is my Savior, and He keeps on saving me. Okay? But when I start following Jesus, I've got an enemy. 1 Peter 5, your adversary, the devil, goes about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So I got to be aware that I'm in a battle, so I got to be on the alert. Secondly, he says, stand firm in the faith. And then fourthly, he says, be strong. Real quickly, I would tie this into Ephesians 6, where you've got the same words. Be strong in the Lord, not in you. You know what God does? God takes strong men and He breaks us down. Last thing we want is to be weak. God takes strong men, He makes us weak. We torpedo our lives, we've got our plans, and then we wind up in a ditch. Somehow, some way, it just doesn't work. And then we finally call out to the Lord. His power is perfected in weakness. We don't want to be weak. But you see, Paul said, when I am weak, then I am strong. It's counterintuitive to what we want. Jesus is strong. I'm not. He says here, be strong. Watch this. Be strong in the Lord. That's why I started with the sovereignty of God. My God is strong. He's in absolute control. He runs the world. He owns the world. He raises up rulers. He sets them down. I vote. I'm grateful I'm an American. Whenever I vote. This is a great country. You can vote early. You can vote often. You can vote if you're dead in this country. And I vote. I'm grateful I get to vote. But I'm going to tell you who puts them in. He raises them up. He sets them down. He raises up kings, He sets them down. That's Daniel 2, that's Isaiah 40. My God runs this thing. He owns it. And Jesus is King of Kings, and He's coming back one day, and He's going to fix it. And it's going to be right forever. You see? So I'm to be strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. Ephesians 6:10 says, be strong in the Lord and the strength of His might. Put on the full armor of God that you may be able to, watch this, stand firm against the strategies of the devil. Once again, you get serious about Jesus, the enemy's going to try and take you out. So you got to stand firm, you see. So much of warfare is footwork. So much of any athletic competition is footwork. Basketball, baseball, football. Footwork. They teach you footwork. If you're an offensive lineman and your job on this play is to pull and lead that back on a sweep, you got to know how to stand. You see? So, here's the deal. You get down in that stance, and the question is, can I ever get up? You're down in that stance, okay? And you can't lean left or right or forward. You pass block. You can't give a hint. So you're down in this stance, and you're going to pull. You got to get your feet right. You have to stand firm. Now, here's how you don't pull. You don't pull like this. You see? You're not standing firm. You're out of balance. When you're like this, if you try to get out there crossing, you're vulnerable. If a linebacker's blitzing, he can just shove you and you're gone, man. But let me show you how you do it. You don't get this at a women's conference. Hut, 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 boom. You see that? There's your first step right there. And so then if that guy's blitzing and you're on your way out, you can still crock that sucker in the name of Jesus and boom, hit whoever you have to hit. Yeah, Beth Moore doesn't do this. That was a little, you might want to clip that. That's footwork. There's footwork in the Christian life. Stand firm. Stand firm on the Word of God. Okay. We could go all day on that. I don't have time. Act like men. Let's talk about acting like men because we got a crisis in our country. We have a crisis in the church. We have a generation of young men that are confused about masculinity. It's not their fault, in my opinion, in most cases. If you've never seen genuine masculinity, how would you know how to pursue it? We have a crisis going on, and you guys know what I'm talking about. We have young men who are unsure about masculinity. We have young men who are they're confused about manhood because they haven't seen it. And this is huge. And it's not only huge for young men, it's huge for young women because godly young women are looking for godly young men. But if the young guys are confused and don't know what masculinity really is, and then we see it all the time, we see it, and this isn't all young men, but we see young men who are attempting to prolong adolescence, and they are trying to put off manhood. Manhood is a responsibility. We've got to help our young men. This could be your son, it could be your son-in-law, it could be just some young guy the Lord's put into your life, but they need to see biblical balanced masculinity put in place. You see? The older men are to teach the younger men. There are 5 markers historically that take a young man from adolescence, the teenage years, into manhood. And 100 years ago, there were no teenage years. You didn't have spring break. You didn't go to summer camp. You worked your tail off. That's what you did. My grandpa, Harry Brown, was in 7th grade, and principal pulled him out of class and was so sorry to tell him that his father had died of a heart attack. That was his last day in school, although he wanted to be an attorney. That was it. Because he had a mom, he had 4 sisters, and he had a handicapped brother. So he went to work in the oil fields, never went to school again in his life. That's what men do. That's what boys do when it's time to be a man. But there are 5 markers historically. Let me give them to you. Number 1, you complete your education. Well, I'm only 8 hours short. Finish it. Finish it. Well, finish it. Just get it done, man. Oh, I haven't graduated from high school. Why not? You can do a GED. Well, get it done. Just get the sucker done. They're not going to hire you without a high school education. They're not going to ask you your grades. Just get it done. You can do it online, whatever that means. You want to be an electrician? Go to trade school. Finish. Men, finish. Okay? Derek Kidner, in his commentary on Proverbs, said there's a type of man in Proverbs who won't start anything, who won't finish anything, and who won't deal with anything. They're called the sluggard. You don't want to be a sluggard. Finish your education. Here's number 2, leave home. Just leave. I have guys, here's a composite. Here's guys. I get guys, here's a guy. Yeah, Steve, I heard you talking. Yeah, my son's 28. He's still at home. I said, really? Why is he at home? Well, he's a smart kid. Yeah, I'm sure he is, Yeah. He's got a degree. I said, well, good. Well, yeah, and he's at home. You seem concerned about that. Well, I'm concerned. What's he do? Plays video games all night. What's he do all day? He sleeps. And I'm getting the sense you're not real happy about this. No, I'm not. He needs to get out there. And I said, well, so what are you going to do? He goes, well, it's kind of a difficult situation. I said, really? Why is that? He said, well, you want him to go, don't you? Well, yeah, my wife, though, she's comfortable with him. Oh, so she runs things, huh? I mean, quite frankly, here's what I hear you telling me in your heart of hearts. He needs to get out there and be a man. Now, see, this is why I speak and then fly out of town immediately. I'm not hanging around here. I hear this all the time. Well, you know what? This guy's 28-year-old. He's got to stop breastfeeding, man. You got to be a man. Now, listen, when families are in crisis, you help out your kids. We've done that. But that's different than enabling a young man to continue just to be not a man. You can't do that. Well, yeah, I think he needs to leave. I said, sounds good to me. When do you think he needs to go? I don't know. What's today? It's Friday. Well, how about Monday? Give him the weekend. Let him figure. Where's he going to go? How would I know? Ask him. He's 28. I mean, this is ludicrous. Here's number 3. Young men should make their own money. Become independent of your parents. That's what men do. Get out there, you work. We're so turned around, we're paying young men not to work who are healthy. Now, if you've got a disability or something, the church will help you. There's no question about that. We help those in need. But young men that can work, we got it twisted in this country. Young men work, well, I don't have any self-esteem. Well, get out there and dig a ditch and you'll start feeling better about yourself because that's what you're supposed to do. I remember my boys in high school, man, I'll tell you, with John and with Josh, and they're in their 30s now and married and doing well. My biggest issue with them, I had to teach those boys to get out of bed in the morning. If I did nothing else, I was going to teach them to get out of bed. Because here's the thing about teenage boys. They never want to go to bed, and then once they're in bed, they never want to get out. But you see, when you're a man, you get out of bed. You don't live off how you feel. You live off what's true and what's right. So you go to bed at 1:30, you've been working on a project, the alarm goes off at 4:30. How do you feel? You feel rotten. Oh, I just think, you don't do that. You get your tail out of bed, you drink about a gallon of coffee, and you go in there and you show up. Because that's what men do. You see, that's our job. Number four, you get married. You don't live with her, you marry her. Well, I'm just wondering if we're sexually compatible. Listen, if she's female, you're male, you're good. Don't give me that sexual stuff. Yeah, don't do that. Marry her. Commit. Better or worse, rich or poor, sickness and in health till death do you part. And you're going to get all of those. You're going to get better and you're going to get worse. Hey, any guy can be committed when it's better. Anybody can do that. Test of commitment is when it's worse. And it can get worse. You'll experience worse. Nobody likes worse, but it's life. Jesus helped me to handle this. I've never had this kind of pressure in my life. And see what happens, you get married and you get in your 30s and suddenly you got 2 or 3 kids and you got bills and you can't sleep at night and you're stressed out and you start getting pains in your chest and you're 33. Hey, I'm telling you, it's great to be a man. But that's manhood. You see? And you're not in it by yourself, guys. because Jesus is your Savior. And He's made promises to you. He's made promises. So you get married. Oh, and have kids. That's the last one. Have kids. It's good for you to have kids. You know why? Because those little kids come out of the womb, and somebody's going to have to grow up. Because you see, we're all selfish. But Jesus calls us to be servants. And you have those little kids, and that little guy, you're changing his diaper, and he'll pee right in your face. And he knows what he's doing. I'm telling you, he knows. Someone's going to have to grow up and be a man and be responsible. You see, this is being a man. Why is it that we have this struggle with, and I want to say this, I don't want to be too hard here, but we've got a problem and we cannot enable our young men to be responsible. My job, your job, is to help our young men get on the path and to show them the path. That's our job. That's what we're called to do. You see? It's not easy. It's necessary, and the Lord will help you. Well, what do I do in this situation? I don't know. Ask Him. He's promised to give you all wisdom if you ask, James 1. I'm editing as I'm going. Why do we have so many young men that are struggling? Well, a lot of it is fatherlessness. Here's another reason. Fathers, and I meet young guys who have fathers, but their dads are not connected. And their dads are not involved in their lives. Malachi 4, verse 6, and He, when He comes, speaking of John the Baptist, fulfilled in Luke 1:17, He, when He comes, will restore the hearts of the fathers to the children and the children to the fathers, lest I come and smite the land with a curse. Our nation's been hit with a curse of fatherlessness. You see? And once again, you wouldn't be here if you didn't want to be used by God. This is a way you can be used by God, is to help a young guy find his way. In 1966, Dr. Marion Levy wrote these words. It's significant. Let me quote him. I'm just going to do 2 sentences. Our young are the first people of whom the following can be said. If they are males, they and their fathers and their brothers and sons and all the males they know are overwhelmingly likely to have been reared under the direct domination and supervision of females from birth to maturity. Never happened before, ever. Now, we thank God for our moms. I thank God for a godly mom. I've got all kinds of godly women in my life. Mary's an incredible wife. My mom, 85, she prays for me constantly. My grandmas prayed for me before I was born. So we thank God for godly women. Some of you guys, your moms raised you. Thank God for those ladies who sacrificed for you. We want to honor them. But that's a job for 2 people. You see, when a young guy is just raised by ladies, he's not sure what masculinity looks like. Now, I'm going to give you some stuff, but I also want to say this immediately. I'm going to talk a little bit about feminization and what it is, but I want you to hear this, okay? I want you to hear this. Feminization can be easily detected and easily reversed. Easily. You see, we're to act like men. Act like men. But if I'm always with just ladies, I don't know what men act like. You getting this? You following it? Okay. But you say, yeah, that's kind of me, Steve. Okay. Listen, I had a real strong dad, and when I first heard about feminization and read about it, I saw me. You're going to see you. That's okay, because it's everywhere in our culture. But we see it, we detect it, you get as close to Christ, and you find godly men, and they're around, that are older than you are, and you watch their lives, and then you kind of just do what they do. Paul said, you follow me as I follow Christ. Watch how the guy treats his wife. You see? Watch how the guy handles conflict. I saw a guy on a plane yesterday just losing it, totally losing it. Had no control, no self-control emotionally. Scaring women lost it. That's not how young men act. No, sir, that's not how you do this thing. You see? He needs to be taught. He can learn. Okay. I want to give you a definition of feminization. If I had more time, and I don't, I'd take you to Job 29. In Job 29, Job is looking over his life before he was afflicted by God, the most righteous man in the world. And in Job 29, he looks back over his life before he had all this affliction, and he talks about how he functioned as a man. You want a definition of biblical masculinity? Get into Job 29. You know what he did? He cared for people. He was a husband. He was a father. You ever heard of animal husbandry? Animal husbandry is the breeding and care of animals. Agricultural husbandry is the care of crops, crop rotation. All this husbandry is taking care. That's what it means to be a husband, is to take care, you see? But we're so fouled up in our country, a lot of guys think to be a husband is not to take care. They think it's to take over. And so you become a tyrant in your own home. That's not being a husband. No, your wife doesn't need that and your kids don't need that. Maybe that's how you were raised. But that's not what the Lord wants to do in your life. Some guys just take over. Some guys take advantage. Some guys take off. They just take off. Oh, my wife's getting older. She's put on a few pounds. You know, I met this 24-year-old girl. You can't handle her. She's going to tie you in knots, man. No, she really understands me. She doesn't understand you. She doesn't know you. If she knew you like your wife, she'd have nothing to do with you. Hey, can I tell you something? Finish strong in your marriage. The older your wife gets, the more committed you are to her. You don't have wandering eyes. You need to show this to your kids and to your grandkids, what it means to be a godly man in marriage. You know what I'm saying? That's our job. You don't take advantage, you don't take care, or take off, you take care. You take care. That's your job. That's what Job did in Job 29. Okay, let me go to feminization real quick. You guys still with me? Okay. I get this from Stephen Clark, a sociologist. Okay, that's all. He's a Roman Catholic theologian. Quite frankly, I'm not there with him on theology. His sociology on this is brilliant. Let me quote real quick. Once again, you're going to recognize yourself here, but don't panic. This is easily repaired. Okay. Being feminized, then, is not the same as being effeminate or being feminine. A feminized male is a male who has learned to behave or react in ways that are more appropriate to women because he's always been around ladies. The feminized male can be normal as a male with no tendencies to reject being male, no tendencies towards homosexuality, yet he can have so been influenced by women or so identified himself with a world in which women dominate. Many of his interests and traits are more womanly than manly. Okay? Compared to men who have not been feminized, he will place much higher emphasis and attention on how he feels and how other people feel. Okay? Now, let me stop right here. When I was in my early 30s, I went through a depression that took me 2.5, 3 years to pull out of. I suddenly found myself, I was a young pastor, wife, 3 kids. I suddenly found myself crying 3 to 4 hours a day and I couldn't stop. I'm not exaggerating. This went on for months. I had no clue what was going on. I thought, I was absolutely floored. I didn't know what was going on. Through a Christian counselor and I started reading, and anyway, they walked me through it. They told me, Steve, it's going to take you a couple years to get through this. And I made some dumb moves ministry-wise, and I thought, and then I had a growing church, and then because, I left too soon, and nobody wanted me, I thought I'd find another church. After a year, God just put me on hold. This little church, less than 100 people, average age close to 80. They were the only ones who wanted me. I'm dead serious. They were so sweet to me, but I was so depressed because I was a real charger, and I knew I could never grow that church, and I never did. But I needed to be there, and those people were so kind to me. I'd cry all the way up there. I'd preach. I'd suck it up. I'd cry all the way home. I cried all the time. And can I tell you the truth? I thought I'd always wanted the Lord to use me, And quite frankly, I was grieving because I thought I'd screwed up so deeply he'd never use me. Now, what I didn't know is that, see, I had 2 seminary degrees, and I thought that qualified me for ministry. Let me tell you something. Seminary degrees don't qualify you for ministry. Suffering qualifies you for ministry. If you want to be used by God, you're going to suffer. And he took me, he enrolled me in some courses I didn't know existed. As John Newton would say, in God's school of disappointment. Some of you guys are enrolled right there, right now. You say, I've never heard of this school. They don't advertise. Nobody would sign up. Can I get a catalog? You don't want a catalog, man. But you look up, you look around one day, and God's enrolled you in the school of disappointment. You learn lessons in the school of disappointment you never learn anywhere else. And you're there for a season, and if you're teachable, he'll take you through, and he'll raise you up, and then he'll use you, which is what you desire. I had no clue what God had intended for my life, that I would be in men's ministry from the age of 40. I'm 65. I had no clue. And here's what happens. As I'm doing men's ministry, there'll be a guy I'm talking to behind, the curtain somewhere, and a guy will come out and he'll start talking to me. All of a sudden, this big, strong, tough guy, all of a sudden, he just starts sobbing. I remember it happened in Chicago. Big guy. Just started sobbing like at a funeral. And he starts going, man, I'm really sorry, man. I said, well, you're fine. Don't worry about it. He said, no, I know. I'm not usually like this. Oh, I said, I'm sure you're not. But I said, you got a broken heart. It's okay. When you have a broken heart, God gave you tear ducts, man. And he said, well, I'm just kind of embarrassed I'm crying. I said, you don't need to be embarrassed. Listen, I can out-cry you any day of the week. That's what I tell him. He goes, you? I go, me. Listen, I was too tough. That's my tendency. I was too blunt. Blunt instruments can kill people. Jesus he had to hey, this is not a road show, guys. This is following Christ, and sometimes he has to afflict us, and he has to make us hurt, to make us the men we want to be. There's got to be a tenderness in your life as a man. You see? But you can't always be tender. Okay, I'm going to get into this. And man, that clock's moving and I'm running out of time. Men who are feminized want the approval of the group. You don't need the approval of the group. You just need to honor the Lord. All you need is to please Jesus. He'll take care of you. Stand on your convictions. Don't you change. If it's a biblical conviction, you don't need everyone. They're not going to like you if you're following Jesus. Let me just finish with this on feminization. It's easy for guys who have been feminized because of ladies, they can be easily manipulated, controlled. If it's the right thing and it's biblical, do it. Don't worry about an emotional reaction. Now, you want to walk her through it and lead her, but eventually you've got to do the right thing before the Lord. Now, stay with me. If a guy is feminized, he will tend to idealize women. If he's religious, he will tend to see in women the ideal Christians or the definition of what it means to be spiritual. He will identify Christian virtue with feminine characteristics. That's wrong. Now, here's how we feminize in the church. Remember, this can be easily changed. He will identify Christianity with feminine characteristics. When I was 5, 6 years old, I went with my mom to the Christian bookstore. She's getting stuff for Sunday school. It was taking a long time. I'm bored. I'm just walking around. And I started looking at stuff really closely. There was this picture of Jesus. And Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane. You've seen it. And there's a rock, and he's like this. You've seen it, right? I started looking at that. Now, let me back up. At home, my mom had some women's magazines back when women's magazines were clean. They're not anymore. But she would read these different magazines, and on the back they had a full-page ad for Breck shampoo, and they always had a portrait of a young model, redhead, 1 month, blonde, brunette, the shiny, lustrous hair that comes from Breck shampoo, all right? I remember seeing that on the coffee table. So I'm with my mom in the Christian bookstore, and I'm looking at Jesus. I'd seen that picture, but I started looking at it. And I noticed Jesus, and I noticed his hands. His hands looked more like my mom's than my dad's. It really did. They were very soft. He had a beard, but he didn't have any blotches or anything on his face like my dad did. He looked more like my mom. And then I started looking at his hair, and I went, oh, Jesus uses Breck shampoo. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Now, I'm going to tell you something. Jesus didn't look like that. When Jesus showed up and started doing miracles, they said, is this not the what? Carpenter. He didn't buy his lumber at the lumber yard. He cut his own trees. He planed his own wood. He had some forearms. He was in shape. He had busted up fingernails. He was a working blue-collar guy. And by the way, if Jesus could be a working blue-collar guy and show up at the same job every day, he sanctified that, and it's honorable to do it. Just thought I'd throw that in. Anyway. I will tell you this. Whoever painted that picture had a feminized view of Jesus. That's not Jesus. What is masculinity? You want to know what masculinity is? Get as close to Christ as you can. Get as close to godly men as you can. Masculinity, biblical masculinity, is bringing the right trait to bear at the right time. Let me give you some traits. Gentleness, kindness, tenderness. Are those good traits? The answer is yes. You should not have a problem with any of those. Okay? As a man, you should be able to be tender and kind and gentle with your wife, with your little girl, with your sons as they need it. I remember getting hit in the face with a baseball bat. I was about 9 years old. And right in the chops. And this coach runs up to me and he says, first words out of his mouth, don't cry. Well, let me hit you in the face with this bat and say you not cry. That's what he said. Now, my dad was right behind you. And I'm just down there. I mean, I'm crying and my dad, my dad he wasn't perfect. My dad was a man. He loved Christ. He loved ball. He loved playing sports. But my dad, my dad got right down there and he says, come here, Steve. Come here, man. And all he did was he said, man, let's take a look. You need to sit down? You know what he was? He was taking care of me. He didn't say, don't cry. I mean, suck it up, man. Come on. Don't let him see you crying. He didn't say that. I'm just, 8, 9 years old? He's just checking me out. He said, what do you think? I said, I don't know. He said, wait, let's just, you want to get out of the game? And we're just talking, and there were just 2 more outs, and he said, all right, you're going to be okay? And then we'll head out. I said, I'm all right, Dad. But see, he cared for me. He took care of me. He said, all right, let's get that eyeball back in that socket. And I don't know what he said. But see, he was taking care of me. My dad took care of me. You're not always a tough guy. You're not always a hard guy. Kindness, tenderness, gentleness with your little girl, with your sons, with your wife. See, this is why I went through my depression. I had to learn how to be tender. Okay, that's why some of you guys are going through stuff, because he's tenderizing your heart. Okay. Now, let me give you some other traits. Boldness, courage, aggressiveness. Boldness, courage, aggressiveness. Are those good traits? Yeah, they're real good. Paul said, pray for me that I might declare the gospel boldly. When Christianity gets out of whack, here's what we do. We feminize Christianity, and we take kindness, gentleness, and whatever else I said, tenderness, and we elevate those above aggressiveness, boldness, and whatever else I said. Are you getting this? Are you getting what I'm saying? Oh, those are sweet traits. Kindness. Oh, those are the Christian traits. They're Christian traits, but so is aggressiveness, boldness, and courage. Thanks. Courage. Those are biblical traits. So, here's biblical masculinity. Biblical masculinity is what Jesus always did. He brought the right trait to bear at the right time. See, now that's biblical masculinity. So you should be able to be tender with your little girl when she's hurting, with your wife. Spiritual leadership. Sometimes your wife, you're in the kitchen, and you don't know what to do. She's over there, and something's on her heart, and she's just all locked up, and she's crying. Man, Steve, what do? I don't know what to do. Can I tell you what to do? You can do this. If she's having a rough time, you just walk over, don't say a word. Just walk over and take her hand and say, Jesus, we need your help. We don't know what to do here. I don't have a clue. I wish I could help her. I don't know what to do, Lord. Would you help us and show us? We ask in your name. That's it. Amen. You've just led spiritually your wife. You can do that. Sometimes you've got to be aggressive. In Job 19, at one point, he was always taking care of the poor and the blind and the infirm. And at one point, he says that I snatch the innocent from the jaws of the wicked. Okay, now I'm going to tell you a story here. By the way, you know, on 2 occasions, Jesus went into the temple. And they were blaspheming his Father's house. And he made a whip, and he went in there, and he started taking names. And guys started looking for the exit signs. And he started kicking some tail. Now, did he do that every day? No, only twice that we can tell. But when it needed to be done, he did it. And those guys are scrambling looking for the exits, and nobody said, look at his hair. Oh, and there's some Christian who, oh, Jesus shouldn't have done that. That wasn't Christian. He's Jesus. He's the living Christ. Well, that wasn't nice. It sure was for his Father's name and glory. They were blaspheming the Father. Now, it was in balance. Okay. Could he be tender? Could he be kind? Yeah. I'm saying bring the appropriate trait to bear. So, I'm about out of time. 8 years ago, maybe, my daughter Rachel was at home, and she was single at the time, now married, 2 kids, and it's great. She was doing dishes, I was watching her, to be real honest. I wasn't helping, I was watching her. And she said, you know, Dad, you know my friend Linda, not her real name. I said, sure. And she'd been up to the house a whole bunch, and they were in a singles group at a church that I was aware of. I don't go there, but I know the church well. You know, Dad, it's really weird. She met this guy at the singles group, and he seemed like such a nice guy and winsome and just really, really a sharp guy. Everybody just likes this guy. And they've been going out, but he's scaring her. I said, scaring her? Yeah, he's scaring her, Dad. I said, what is he doing? Well, she doesn't want to see him anymore, and she's made that clear, but he won't leave her alone. He calls her constantly. He's calling her in the middle of the night. He came over the other night and pounded on her door about midnight. I said, do the guys at the church know, the singles guy? She said, yeah. I said, what are they doing? She said, well, no one's done anything. I said, what's this guy's name, right? And she told me. And she said, you know, it seems like he's gotten a girl in another church pregnant, and maybe that's happened before. I said, okay. I just filed it away. 3 months later, it's Christmas. Rachel is singing at the Christmas thing, you know, the 5-6 services in a row, and I flew in, just missed her song. I'm out there in the coffee shop waiting for the next service, and this guy comes up to me, young guy, and I'm reading the sign, and he said, excuse me, are you Rachel's dad? And I said, yeah. He said, I'm such and such. I said, hey, it's the guy. I said, how you doing? He said, I've always wanted to meet you. I said, well, I'm glad to meet you. And he said, don't you talk to men and write Christian books? And I said, yeah. He said, man, I wish I could talk to you sometime. I said, when's the next service start? He said, about 20 minutes. I said, I'll buy you coffee. He said, okay. We sat down with coffee. And he said, yeah, I've really heard a lot about you. I said, I've actually heard about you. And he goes, really? I go, yeah. He said, well, what have you heard? I said, here's what I've heard. I've heard she doesn't want to see you anymore. Oh, I said, no, I've also heard you're pretty good with words. I just want you to listen to me. She's been in our home. Her parents have been in our home. Her dad lives 1,500 miles away. You're scaring her. Let me tell you how this is going to work. I'm stepping in. And from here on out, you're dealing with me. And I'm going to tell you something. If you ever call her again, I'm calling you. Try me. If you pound on her door, I'm pounding on yours. Now, do I do that every weekend? No. Why would I? But when it needs to be done, do it. If he had been repentant, I would have changed, but he wasn't. I'm out of time. You get the point? You do what you need to do. That's all. You just do what you need to do.